Walk can take you a lot of places. All over the world, if I'm being quite frank.
Be formless, shapeless. Be water, my friend.
Yo, yo, yiggity, yo. Welcome back to the Beast Podcast. It is your host, Deshaun Beasley. You can find me on Instagram at coach_bees. On today's show, I'm bringing you not really a book review, but I guess an article review. As you guys know, I've talked about it multiple times on my podcast. I am going back to school to get my master's. I am in the youth development program, the master's program, and the course that I'm in right now is youth or social policy. And so we're really looking at policies and capitalism, how it's set up, and the effects of that, good, bad, and different, but just looking at that. I'm going to pull up my notes here so I can see it. Hopefully I can see you guys all as well. So yeah, when you're looking at capitalism, I guess that's definition, political economy. Basically, political economy is a form of analysis that examines the relationship between the state and the economic and the economy. So that's basically all political economy, like the relationship between the state and how politics affects the economy. Um, Focusing on how the states use social policy as a way of advancing slash protecting the interests of capitalism and its ruling elites. So, um, yeah, like how the policies. So, just looking at that political economy, um, who decides who hmm, who usually puts himself in a position to make the laws and policies. Usually people who have money, people who can campaign. In previous weeks, we've talked about how I think it was, I don't know the exact number, but I guess it was the last election. There was like maybe I don't want y'all to quote me on this, but there was a considerable amount of money spent from a few donors rather than a bunch of small donors, meaning like these big companies are dropping millions and billions of dollars to back certain candidates, um, which is what's driving the political economy. So you have people with money promoting other people with money into these political seats. While they're in these political seats, they're making the policies that are affecting how the economy run. So you have people who are in favor of capitalism, who are in favor of, let's just say, exploiting others for profit. I mean, even because not all capitalism is exploiting others, right? Because there is a good form of capitalism, but basically, people who are in favor of capitalism, you're putting them in positions to make policies. And when you look at the reason why that's important to know is because when you look at uh, the economy and financialization and how it really happened usually really like around the 90s. And I talked about during the class, we talked about a couple different shifts that happened from like the 40s to like the 80s. The people who were in political power were more left leaning, like they were more for the people. They were more for putting policies in place to make sure that capitalism doesn't get out of hand, essentially, right? That there's like checks and balances, like there's a cap on how much you can make. There was a ceiling set. And because they set a ceiling, it prevented the people underneath the ceiling to exploit others who are underneath the ceiling, right? Which was kind of one of the pros of that time frame. And in my opinion, I believe during that time frame, because there was such a strong, ear to the streets, if you will, for social movement and social justice, that it applied more pressure on the government to promote policies that help the people. I think once you get to the 80s and 90s, you see a shift, as in the families are deteriorating. You get the crack epidemic that sweeps through the Americas from the 80s. Um, yeah, and because of that, the crime bill reform. We talk about I'm recording this right now, March 4th, so it's a day before I'm going to talk about racial capitalism in our YDiv class. But we talk about how uh, political economies look at individuals as disposable. So if you're of no capitalistic gain, you are disposable. So if you look at in the 80s and 90s, as you lean towards, the crack epidemic, and now more people are going to jail because of the laws towards drug offenses. So now you have more free capital, because as people are going to jail, that is where the money is going towards. So now you're putting more money into prisons, because that's another form of pushing the capitalistic society. So during that time in the 80s and 90s, banks began to shift from investing their profits in production to speculation. So if I'm a bank and let's say I got $1,000, in the past, I would give, $500 to the baker down the street. I would give $500 to the furniture store owner down the street so they can renovate their spot, whatever. Whereas like in the 80s and 90s, you get to a new, and even 2000s and beyond, you get to a new form of capitalism and financialization, where banks are starting to invest into speculation. So instead of giving that money and lending it out to a baker who can run his bakery, I'm going to give that money to this certain business. I'm going to invest it in this certain business because I think this business has potential to grow. That's speculation. This narrows the distribution of profits, and the profits stay within a small group of wealthy investors versus production. Because if I were to put that money towards the baker or towards that small business owner down the street, right, it's going to spread profits, because now that baker is going to buy from this other person, who's going to buy from this other person, who's going to buy, the baker's going to buy from the welder is going to buy from, the steel maker is going to, and so on and so forth. So instead of putting money back into the production of goods and services, aka the people, we're going to speculate it, and hopefully we can just make more. Um, and the reason why that's important is because um, you start seeing the policies start leaning towards favoring those who are doing the speculation. So you start seeing, you know, the laws. So, like for example, the Glass-Steagall Act in 1933, it forbade commercial banks from speculating because it was too risky. But in 99, Clinton repealed it. So in 2004, investment banks were allowed to borrow without collateral. So basically, like, you don't regulate it. So people can borrow without actually having the finances to back that up. And the reason why that's important is because you start to get into a new wave of how people are taxed. So if you are putting more money into stocks, bonds, speculation, you're going to be taxed at a lower rate than if it was earned income or business income. So who does that favor, right? That favors the capitalists, because they're using the money from speculation to then further speculate. So they're doubling and tripling their money. And they're also using the speculation of other people to buy their debt. So what is the exact term for that? So like, is it a derivative? Kind of. So like, it's basically like, let's say I'm party A, and party B has I said Party B, almost like Cardi B, but Party B has a $25,000 car debt. So Party C is like, hey, I want to buy that debt from you because the person who owes this debt, their credit is good. I know they're going to pay on time, and I know because of the interest that's being charged, I'm actually going to make money on that. So let me buy that from you. So, and again, because it's a certain type of investment, I'm going to pay less taxes on that. So now you're profiting off of the person. It's like, again, the rich getting richer. So I profited because I sold the debt. The person who bought the debt is profiting because they're getting the interest. And the whole time, it's all off the backs of person B, who has the debt, has to pay on the debt monthly. And at the end of the loan, they're actually going to pay more than what it was probably worth to begin with. And if they don't pay, then the person who owns the loan is going to repossess it or take it back. So you see how all of these like rules and policies are in favor of are in favor of the person who owns, or the capitalist, um, who owns the means of production. If I own the means of production, then I can use that means of production to speculate. And while I do understand the laws are in the favor of the capitalists who are doing the speculating, I think I don't want to say concern, but the one thing that I think about is like, why aren't more individuals, and how can we incentivize more individuals to get in on this as well? Like we're starting to see, like, especially in 2020, again, I talked about this in class. In 2020, we saw with the PPP loans, we also saw people getting unemployment. Like we started to see a wave of people like using that money wisely to start making more investments and to improve their tax class and their tax status. Um, so we are seeing a new wave of people doing what the capitalists are doing, following that playbook. I think, again, like until the system changes, which it's not going to change anytime soon, we need to learn how to use this system. Like we need to learn how to use, credit default swaps. We need to learn how to, get derivatives, we need to learn we need to learn that stuff, right? So that way we can start becoming the capitalist. Because again, like it's like this. It's like the battle between good and evil. Like if more evil people have more money, then they're going to do more evil things. If more good people have more money, then they're going to do more good things. And that is why like us as people have to use the system to our advantage, to create an advantage for ourselves, or at least level the playing field as much as we can. Like we need to use the rules and policies that are available to us, grants, loans, new incentive plans, whatever it is that may come from, our pressure that we're putting on the government to represent us since they're taxing us. No representation without taxation. I think we are seeing that new wave of people who are using their resources wisely. And I think that is how we start to change our lot in life. It's not going to happen overnight, but with more awareness, because all it takes is a generation. Like if we start teaching this new generation of high schoolers, middle schoolers, elementary about civic education and about how policies work and about because we are the leaders of the new social movements. Like how quick was it for us to do a social media blackout during the 2020 when all the murdering of unarmed black men happened? Like how quick were we able to do that? Like imagine if we were able to mobilize that quick for any type of social movement or social change. If only we can keep that stick to itiveness for long enough, and for a common purpose. But that's neither here nor there. But those are kind of my thoughts on financialization, hedging. It's interesting. It's a whole different ball game. It's so risky, which is why they're all stressed. which is, it's interesting, man. It's kind of like playing with fake money. Yeah, I don't know. I can't call it, but I'm out. Peace. Dang, I'm so sorry because I just recorded like a whole 15-minute. I was just I'm talking for 15 minutes and I wasn't even recording. But dang, I'm so sorry. Um, so I recorded the first part, but I didn't even answer the question. I kind of set up the scene talking about financialization and the financial side of it. But let me just read the prompt that we're supposed to answer. We talked a lot about our political economy and how it's modeled on notions of individualism rather than ideas of care. And people gave some wonderful examples of how we take care of each other as alternatives to the way our current political economy operates. I believe that these models of care from everyday life can inspire us to dream up new societies, new arrangements, conditions, etc. So think of a very special friendship or relationship that you have in your life. What would a political economy modeled after that friendship / relationship look like? One of the things that I was thinking of is one of the first things that I recall that I said earlier was that in a political economy and any friendship or relationship, somebody has to take the lead. And just because you're in the lead doesn't mean you have final say, but it means you take the lead, you take the initiative. If you're taking the lead, it rises and falls on you. I think a lot of left leaning, I would assume from the information that I've got that a lot that left leaning individuals are more so horizontalists, meaning they want everyone to have equal say. But when you operate that way, it's hard for decisions to be made. So you talk about a political economy. I want decisions to be made pretty quick. So having a leader or somebody to have a final say would be beneficial. Now, if you have a leader, there is a checks and balances system that needs to happen. Um, for example, if you have a friend who's going out to eat, even though I propose a place, let's say Olive Garden, I would need to have my friend or colleague in this situation have the power to veto and request something else. I think that's only right in a healthy political climate, right? To be able to respectfully disagree and give reasons why. And we should be able to have the space to have that conversation about the pros and cons and our needs and wants. And that's the thing with an economy because needs and wants are going to change. Minimum wage when I was in Ohio was, I believe, like $7 an hour, 7.50. Now I'm in New England and minimum wage is $12. Most jobs are going to start you at 15. So needs and wants are going to change as the cost of living changes. The environment dictates kind of what we need and where we're living. If you live in Florida, it's not necessarily a need, but it's definitely highly recommended to have at least a fan, if not air conditioning, right? If you live in Texas or something like that. Um, what else does a political economy look like? Again, I like to think of like a team approach. So, like if you're running a sports team, you're looking out for what's going to propel the team forward, not what's going to be best for me, but for the team. I don't want to sit in practice and make my teammates run the whole time, but it might be what's best for the team. That might be what's best to do is for us to run to get in shape. And sometimes we got to do the hard things if that's what it's going to take to get us where we want to go. I think the political economy that we're currently in, there is no guiding rod, right? Like it's just this open market academy, open market economy, and people are making decisions as they see fit, whatever works best for them. And what I think is that um, as a capitalist, because I would identify as a capitalist, I do believe that um, so if we're going to say as a capitalist, free market economy, goods and services, selling. What was I going to talk about? Um, mm, 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 mm. Gonna do what's best for the team. Oh, having a mission, right? Like America's mission. Um, we've kind of strayed away from the mission, right? Like liberty and justice for all is kind of like the tagline for it. But because you can look at the policies and really show that we're not following our mission. We're putting the money over the mission. And I think that's a political economy ideology that needs to be solidified because the exchange of money is a spiritual act. It can be felt. Next week, I'll be talking about Flint, Michigan, and the racial capitalism that happened there, and how you can't deny the intersection between racism and capitalism, and how both of those intertwine to lead to the devastation of communities. Um, yeah, so I think that is how you can have an economy and different arrangements. But again, like you have to have a common thing. I think that's one of the flaws of America is because our economy, our country has been built on the backs of other individuals. People are always thinking about themselves and how they can take advantage of others. Whereas there are other economies where they are capitalists, they may have a democracy, and also people look out for one another. Back in the 70s, even in the 80s, like people looked out for one another. It was just a thing. Now it's become more individualist. Like people want to only look out for self. I don't know if it's a speculation because people feel like they're more dependent on themselves because they don't have to depend on products and services and goods. But I don't know. Those are just my thoughts.